I never expected betrayal to smell like expensive perfume, but there it was, Chanel No. 5 lingering on my husband's collar when he claimed to have spent the day in editing rooms that smelled of coffee and stale air. David had always been meticulous about his appearance, his pressed shirts, perfectly styled salt and pepper hair, the way his Italian leather shoes gleamed under our home's recessed lighting. But lately, his meticulousness had reached new heights. The bathroom counter displayed evidence of his morning ritual: expensive facial serums that hadn't been there last month, a new cologne that was stronger, more youthful than his signature scent of 15 years. I stood in our master bathroom, running my fingers over these new additions, a chill settling in my stomach despite the steam still clinging to the shower glass. "Tori, have you seen my blue tie, the Hermes one?" David called from the walk-in closet. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, 45 years old, still attractive but with fine lines around my eyes that told stories of late nights editing films, of laughter, of stress. My dark hair fell in waves around my face, recently colored to hide the increasing gray. "Check the dry cleaning," I called back, my voice steadier than I felt. "I picked it up yesterday." David appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 50, he still had the physique of a man a decade younger, another recent development. The personal trainer, the protein shakes, the dawn workouts that had never been part of our routine before. "You're a lifesaver," he said, flashing that smile that had charmed Hollywood for years, the smile that had once made my heart race, but now just made me wonder who else had seen it lately. "Big meeting today. Could be our next breakout project." I nodded, watching him adjust his tie in the mirror. "Who's the meeting with anyone I know?" A brief hesitation, almost imperceptible. "Just some investors, and that new talent I mentioned, the one with the unique perspective on the urban experience." I knew every contact in David's professional Rolodex. We'd built Winter's Productions together, brick by brick, relationship by relationship. There was no new talent he'd mentioned to me. "Sounds interesting," I said, reaching for my moisturizer. "Maybe I should join you. I could reschedule my lunch with Lily's college counselor." David's reflection stiffened slightly. "No need. It's preliminary stuff. Probably boring. Besides, Lily's future is more important." He kissed the top of my head, quick, distracted, and grabbed his watch from the counter. The $30,000 Rolex I'd given him for our 15th anniversary, when our first independent film had received critical acclaim, a time when our success had still felt shared. "Don't wait up tonight," he called over his shoulder as he headed for the door, probably looking at a late one. The front door closed with a soft click that echoed through our sprawling Hollywood Hills home. I waited 5 minutes, counting each second, before opening the banking app on my phone. The transaction had posted overnight, another $50,000 withdrawn from our joint business account, the third such withdrawal this month, for a project David refused to discuss. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. Time to find out exactly what kind of project my husband was investing in. The coffee shop near UCLA's film school was my territory, not David's. The baristas knew my order, black coffee, no room, and nodded as I took my usual corner table. This was where I'd conducted informal interviews with promising film students for years, identifying talent before they even graduated. Across from me sat Jamie, David's personal assistant for the past 4 years, a bright young woman who'd once aspired to be a screenwriter before the realities of Hollywood economics pushed her toward more stable employment. Her fingers nervously tapped against her mug of chai latte. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If David found out—" "He won't," I assured her, sliding an envelope across the table. "Your letter of recommendation for the UCLA Producers Program, as promised." Jamie looked around nervously before taking the envelope. "Thank you. This means everything." "Just tell me what you know. Jamie." I kept my voice gentle but firm. Where is the money going? She took a shaky breath. It's not a project, at least, not the way you think. Her eyes met mine, filled with reluctance and pity. It's a person, Mia Carter, the actress. I maintained my composure, though something cold and heavy settled in my chest. I'm not familiar with her work. That's because she doesn't have much bit parts in indie films, a recurring role on that medical drama that got canceled. She's pretty, but... Jamie hesitated. Not very talented. And David is investing in a film starring her. I prompted. Jamie nodded, looking miserable. He's producing Eternal Dawn with her as the lead. Budget of $15 million. But that's not all the money is for. I waited, my coffee cooling untouched. There's an apartment in Venice Beach, hotel stays, jewelry. Jamie looked down at her hands. I've had to arrange it all, book private dinners, cancel his actual meetings to create time. He made me sign an NDA, but... She glanced up at me. You gave me my first industry job. I owe you more than I owe him. My hands remained steady as I took out my phone and pulled up a photo. Is this her? Jamie nodded at the image I'd found online. A stunning young woman with cascading chestnut hair and pouty lips. 28 years old, according to her IMDb page. Nearly 2 decades younger than me. How long? I asked. 6 months, since she auditioned for that small role in Western Lights. 6 months, while I'd been handling our daughter's college applications, negotiating with distributors, and running the actual business of our company. My husband had been dismantling everything we'd built together. There's more, Jamie said, her voice dropping even lower. He's mortgaged the company, taken loans against future projects. The investors think you've approved all of it. The edges of my vision darkened momentarily. Our company, our life's work, the security we'd built for our daughter, all of it leveraged for a young actress who couldn't act. Thank you, Jamie. I stood, my movements mechanical. Use the recommendation. You deserve better than what's coming. She looked confused, afraid. What are you gonna do? I left some cash on the table and gathered my bag. What I've always done, fix the problems David creates. Our home office, once my sanctuary, now felt like an archaeological dig into my failing marriage. I methodically went through financial records, emails David hadn't been careful enough to delete, calendar entries with suspicious blocks of private meetings. The evidence mounted hour by hour. Dinner reservations for 2 at restaurants where David and I had once celebrated anniversaries. A lease agreement for a beachfront apartment under the company name, supposedly for visiting talent. Credit card statements showing purchases at Tiffany, Gucci, La Perla. All while David insisted we needed to be financially cautious about our daughter's college fund. Night had fallen by the time I heard his key in the door. I remained seated at his desk, the damning documents arranged before me like tarot cards predicting our future. David froze in the doorway, his expression shifting from shock to anger to calculation in the space of seconds. You're going through my things. His voice held the practiced indignation of a man who directed emotional scenes for decades. I'm going through our things, I corrected, my voice surprisingly calm. Our company records, our financial statements, our future that you've apparently decided to spend on a talentless actress half your age. He flinched, not at the accusation, but at my description of Mia. You don't know what you're talking about. Mia is a once-in-a-generation talent. She just needs the right vehicle. A $15 million vehicle paid for with money we don't have. David's jaw tightened. He moved to the bar cart in the corner and poured himself 2 fingers of the expensive scotch we'd bought to celebrate his second Oscar nomination. The film will make its money back 10 times over. You've never understood the investment side of this business. I let out a hollow laugh. I've only negotiated every distribution deal we've ever made, only structured every financing arrangement, only kept our investors happy for 18 years. That's different. He waved dismissively. the ice clinking in his glass. "This is about artistic vision. Is that what we're calling it now?" I stood, gathering the documents into a neat pile. "Let me be clear, I know about the apartment, the jewelry, the money. I know you've been sleeping with her, funding her lifestyle with our company's resources, and lying to our investors about my involvement. What I don't know is what you plan to do about it." David stared at me for a long moment, then sank into the leather armchair opposite the desk. For an instant, he looked older, tired, almost the man I'd married rather than the stranger he'd become. "I love her, Tori," he said quietly, vulnerability replacing his defensive posture. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but what Mia and I have, it's real. It's the kind of connection I haven't felt in years." How convenient that this deep connection manifested with a young actress who needs your influence to advance her career. His face hardened. "You're being unfair, cynical. I'm being realistic. You're not the first middle-aged producer to fall for a beautiful young actress, and you won't be the last." I crossed my arms. "What happens when the film flops when you've destroyed our company, spent our savings, and she moves on to someone who can still advance her career?" "The film won't flop," he snapped. "And Mia isn't using me. She loves me. Enough to risk her own money on this film. Or is it just yours? Ours. That's on the line." David stood abruptly, his temporary vulnerability replaced by the cool calculation I recognized from tough negotiations. "I didn't want it to be like this, but you're forcing my hand. I want a divorce." Tori, though I'd been expecting it, the words still hit like a physical blow. 18 years of marriage, dismissed so easily. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "But we'll need to address the company, the house, Lily's college fund." "I'm prepared to be more than generous," he interrupted. "You'll get the house, a substantial settlement, shared custody. Though at 16, Lily can obviously decide where she wants to live." I nodded slowly. "And the company, that stays with me. It's always been my vision, my projects. You've been supportive, and I appreciate that. But Winters Productions has always been mine." The audacity nearly took my breath away. I had edited his scripts, identified talent, smoothed over his professional relationships, and handled the unglamorous business operations that kept our company solvent. "You can't be serious. I've had papers drawn up." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, setting it on the desk between us. "Review them with your lawyer. You'll see it's a fair offer." "Does your fair offer include telling the investors you lied to them about my support for this vanity project, that you're risking their money to impress your girlfriend?" David's expression turned dangerous. "Be careful. Tori, you've benefited from my success for years. Don't try to rewrite history now." "History." I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "I've been writing, editing, and producing your history since the day we met. Without me, there wouldn't be a Winters Productions." "That's your ego talking." He drained his scotch and set the glass down with deliberate precision. "You've been a wonderful wife and partner, but let's not pretend you've been anything more than supportive. The investors invest in me. The talent works with me. The industry knows me." Each word was another bullet, precisely aimed. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and wondered how I'd missed his transformation from the passionate, ethical filmmaker I'd married into this cliché of Hollywood narcissism and entitlement. "I see." I nodded slowly. "And if I don't accept your generous offer, if I tell the investors the truth," his smile was cold, "then I'll make sure you get nothing. The company is legally in my name. The contracts, the relationships. You're just the wife. Tori. Always have been. Just the wife." The words echoed in my head as David walked out, leaving the divorce papers on the desk between us like a gauntlet thrown down. I waited until I heard his car start before I allowed myself to feel it. The rage, the hurt, the humiliation. 18 years of partnership, erased with a few cruel words. I opened the envelope and scanned the settlement offer. It was insultingly low, a fraction of what I was entitled to. David was counting on my pride, my desire to avoid a public battle. He knew me so well, or thought he did. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Mrs. Winters, Jamie gave me your contact. I'm Aaron from the Eternal Dawn production team. I need to talk to you about what's happening with the film. I stared at the message for a long moment, then texted back, I'm listening. The pieces began to align in my mind. If David wanted to cast me as just the wife, then he had severely underestimated his opponent. Hollywood loved a good revenge story, and I was about to give them one for the ages. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of deception and planning. On the surface, I played the role David expected, the wounded but dignified wife negotiating her exit from his life. I hired a divorce attorney recommended by a female studio head who'd been through her own public split. I began moving my personal items from our shared office at Winters Productions. I even met with a realtor about selling our house. Though I had no intention of giving up the property David and I had purchased with my inheritance as the down payment, all while I gathered information, built alliances, and prepared for the most important production of my career. Aaron, my contact on the Eternal Dawn set, provided daily updates on the disaster unfolding there. Mia was consistently unprepared, requiring dozens of takes for basic scenes. The director, a once promising indie filmmaker desperate for a commercial break, was drinking heavily to cope with the stress, and David was blowing through money at an alarming rate, demanding expensive reshoots and specialty equipment to try to elevate Mia's performance. The raw footage is painful to watch, Aaron texted one night. I've worked on student films with better acting. Can you get me access? I replied. Already done. Check your email. Password is just the wife. I smiled at his choice of password. Aaron had quickly become my most valuable asset, a talented editor who'd witnessed David taking credit for my work for years and was eager to help set the record straight. The footage was even worse than I'd imagined. Mia was beautiful on camera, but utterly lifeless. Her delivery was flat, her emotional range non-existent. No amount of lighting tricks or editing could salvage a performance this hollow. Yet David had invested everything in her, our money, our company's reputation, his own professional credibility. My phone rang, displaying Lily's photo. My heart lightened at the sight of our daughter's name. At 16, she was the best of both David and me, his creativity and my pragmatism, wrapped in teenage confidence and vulnerability. Hi, sweetheart, I answered, my voice softening. Mom. Her voice was tight with suppressed emotion. Is it true about Dad and that actress? My heart sank. I'd hoped to shield Lily from the uglier aspects of our separation, at least until we had a clear path forward. Who told you? It's online. Hollywood Reporter has an interview with them. Her voice broke slightly. They're talking about how they found each other and how she inspires his creative vision and how you were holding him back. I closed my eyes, absorbing this new blow. I'd expected David to go public eventually, but not this soon, and not in such a deliberately hurtful way. Mom, are you there? I'm here. Lily. I took a steadying breath. Some of what you read is true. Dad is involved with Mia Carter. We are getting divorced, but I was never holding him back. That's just bullshit, Lily supplied. With the bluntness of a teenager, despite everything, I laughed. Yes, exactly. Everyone knows you're the reason Dad's films are good, she continued. My friend's parents all say so. The way he's acting, it's like he's having a midlife crisis or something. It's complicated, sweetie, but I need you to know that none of this is your fault, and both your dad and I love you very much. I know that. A pause. I want to stay with you. After. Relief flooded through me. You're always welcome here. This is your home. Does Dad even know how many schools I've applied to or what my top choice is? Honey, he doesn't. Does he? Because you're the one who's been handling all of it. I sighed. Your father has been very busy with this new project. Yeah, I saw her project all over Instagram. She looks like she's made of plastic. Lily, I admonished, though I silently agreed. Sorry. She didn't sound sorry at all. I have to go. Chemistry study group. But Mom don't let him get away with this. You're way too good for that. After we hung up, I opened The Hollywood Reporter on my laptop. The article was worse than I'd imagined. A glowing profile of David and Mia as Hollywood's exciting new power couple, complete with a photo shoot of them in intimate poses around the Venice Beach apartment purchased with our company's money. The quotes were devastating. David described Mia as the muse I've been waiting for my entire career, and their connection as an artistic revelation. Worse, he characterized our marriage as a practical partnership that served its purpose, and me as supportive but ultimately conventional. The final paragraph delivered the killing blow. Sources close to the couple say Winter's longtime wife, Victoria, struggled to accept her husband's evolving artistic vision, creating tension that ultimately made the marriage untenable. David needed someone who could understand and nurture his creative process, says one insider. He found that in Mia. I closed the laptop, breathing deeply through the rage and hurt that threatened to overwhelm me. David had not only taken our money and company, but was now attempting to rewrite our entire history, casting himself as the misunderstood artist and me as the unsupportive wife. My phone buzzed with another text from Aaron. Have you seen it? Everyone on set is disgusted. We're with you. That simple message of solidarity steadied me. I wasn't alone in this fight. I opened my private email account, the one David knew nothing about, and composed a message to Eliza Chen, the tech billionaire who had invested in 3 of our previous films and who prized loyalty and honesty above all else. Eliza, we need to talk about Eternal Dawn. There's something you should know about where your $5 million is actually going. The Italian restaurant in the hills above Malibu was known for 2 things: incredible pasta and absolute discretion. The owner, Giuseppe, had been serving Hollywood's elite for decades, providing private rooms where deals were made and secrets shared without fear of exposure. Eliza Chen sat across from me, her expression unreadable as she sipped her sparkling water. At 42, she'd built a tech empire that rivaled the major studios in cultural influence. She wore simple black clothing that probably cost more than a month's rent in most Los Angeles neighborhoods. Her only adornment a jade pendant that had belonged to her grandmother. I've always appreciated that you don't waste time with small talk, Victoria, she said, setting down her glass. So I'll do the same. Show me what you have. I handed her a USB drive. Financial records, emails, the truth about where your investment in Eternal Dawn is going. She pocketed the drive without looking at it, and the film itself, a disaster. The lead can't act, the script is derivative, and David is throwing good money after bad trying to salvage it. Eliza studied me for a moment. You know, when David first approached me about investing, I asked why you weren't at the meeting. He said you were focusing on your daughter's college applications. I was, but I would never have missed an investment meeting for a project of this size. I know, Eliza nodded. That's why I had my team insert certain clauses in the contract, protections that David probably didn't read too carefully. I raised an eyebrow. What kind of protections? A ghost of a smile crossed her face. The kind that become very relevant if he misrepresented your involvement or misappropriated funds. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. You suspected something wasn't right. Let's just say I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone is operating differently than their established pattern. She leaned forward. I've always invested in Winter's productions because you were part of the equation. Victoria, David has vision. Yes, but you have judgment. Without that balance, She shrugged. I need your help, Eliza. I said simply, not just with the money, though that matters, but with what comes next. And what is that? I outlined my plan, carefully, methodically, leaving nothing to chance. When I finished, Eliza was silent for a long moment. It's ruthless, she said finally. David won't recover professionally. He should have thought of that before he leveraged our company, spent our savings, and tried to erase my contributions. Eliza nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Access to the premiere, influence with the festival committee, and your public support afterward. She considered this, then extended her hand across the table. I'm in. Not just because I want my investment protected, but because I've watched you build that company alongside David for years. It's time everyone else saw that too. We shook hands, sealing the alliance that would become the foundation of my revenge. The night of the Eternal Dawn premiere arrived with all the glamour and anticipation Hollywood could muster. David had pulled every string, called in every favor to secure a spot at the prestigious West Coast Film Festival, a launching pad for Oscar campaigns and serious industry recognition. I watched the red carpet live stream from my hotel room, where I was preparing for my own entrance. David and Mia arrived in a black limousine, stepping out to camera flashes and shouted questions from entertainment reporters. They looked the part of Hollywood royalty, David handsome in a custom tuxedo, Mia stunning in a silver gown that left little to the imagination. They posed for photographers, David's hand possessively at the small of her back, both wearing expressions of confident anticipation. This film represents a new chapter for Winters Productions, David told an interviewer, his arm around Mia's waist, a bold artistic direction that I've been working toward for years. And you're the muse behind this new chapter, the reporter asked Mia. She smiled, rehearsed and perfect. David and I share a vision for storytelling that transcends conventional boundaries. Eternal Dawn is just the beginning of what we'll create together. I turned off the stream and faced the mirror. My own preparation had been meticulous, a blood-red gown that hugged my curves, hair and makeup that emphasized my natural beauty rather than trying to compete with Mia's youth. I looked elegant, confident, and unmistakably like a woman who wasn't going down without a fight. A knock at the door announced Aaron's arrival. He entered with a small hard drive in hand. It's done, he said, spliced perfectly into the final reel. The projectionist has been paid. He'll switch to our version at exactly the right moment. And the festival directors, they know nothing, as far as they're concerned. This is the version David approved. I nodded, satisfaction coursing through me. Time to give the audience the real show they've been waiting for. The theater was packed when I arrived. Industry executives, critics, celebrities, all gathered to witness what David had been hyping as the next evolution in prestige filmmaking. I slipped in quietly through a side entrance, taking a seat near the back just as the lights began to dim. From my vantage point, I could see David and Mia in the center of the theater, surrounded by investors and studio heads. Eliza Chen sat 2 rows behind them, her expression neutral as she noticed my entrance with a slight nod. The festival director took the stage, introducing David as one of the industry's most visionary producers. David joined him, basking in the applause. Before launching into a speech about artistic courage and the power of new voices, he thanked the investors, the festival, and finally, Mia, the heart and soul of this film, and the woman who reminded me why I fell in love with cinema. Not once did he mention me, or the 18 years I'd spent helping build the company that had produced this film. The lights dimmed completely, and Eternal Dawn began to play. For the first hour, I sat in tense anticipation, watching the mediocre melodrama unfold on screen. Mia's performance was exactly as bad as the raw footage had suggested. Beautiful, but vacant, incapable of conveying the complex emotions the story demanded. Around me, I could sense the audience's growing restlessness. the subtle shifting in seats that signaled disappointment. And then, just as the film approached its climactic scene, the screen flickered briefly. When the image returned, it wasn't the dramatic confrontation between Mia's character and her fictional antagonist. Instead, it was David's face, in close-up, from a meeting I'd secretly recorded weeks earlier. "The investors are idiots," his voice echoed through the theater. "They'll believe whatever we tell them about the budget. Just make sure the paperwork shows the money going to production costs instead of Mia's apartment." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. David shot to his feet, but it was too late. The film continued, not with the fictional story, but with a carefully edited montage of damning evidence. David explaining to Mia how to respond to questions about her acting experience. "Just say you studied method. No one knows what that actually means anyway." Financial records highlighting the personal expenses charged to the production jewelry, clothing, the Venice apartment. Mia complaining about having to pretend to be interested in his boring stories, and David promising her, "Once the film launches your career, you can have anyone you want. Just stick with me until then." And finally, most devastatingly, a split-screen comparison scenes from David's most acclaimed films before and after my uncredited editing, revealing how my input had transformed mediocre footage into award-winning sequences. The theater had descended into chaos. Investors were on their feet, shouting questions. Critics were furiously typing on their phones. And in the center of it all, David stood frozen, his face ashen as his carefully constructed facade crumbled before the entire industry. I rose from my seat and walked calmly to the exit, pausing only when I heard David's desperate voice calling my name. "Tori, what have you done?" His face was contorted with rage and humiliation. I turned slowly, aware that every eye in the theater was on us, that this moment would be recounted in industry gossip for years to come. I showed them the truth. "David, something you seem to have forgotten in your rush to rewrite our history." "You've destroyed everything," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "The company, my reputation, your future in this town." I removed his hand from my arm, my voice steady and clear enough to carry to those watching. "No, David, you destroyed everything when you decided our 18 years together meant nothing. When you spent our daughter's college fund on your girlfriend. When you called me just the wife after I spent 2 decades making you look better than you are." Mia pushed through the crowd, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. "You bitch, do you know what you've done to my career?" I regarded her calmly. "You never had a career. Mia, you had my husband's midlife crisis. There's a difference." Security was moving toward us now, trying to contain the situation. I looked past David and Mia to where Eliza Chen stood with a group of stern-faced investors. "I believe your investors have some questions for you. David, don't worry about me. I'll be fine." I smiled, the expression genuine for the first time in months. Unlike you, I actually know how to make good films, and now everyone else knows it too. With that, I walked out of the theater into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of David's carefully constructed illusion and the beginning of my own resurrection. 1 year later, the view from my new office overlooked the same stretch of Hollywood that I could see from our old home, but the perspective was different now, higher, clearer. Eliza Chen sat across from me, reviewing the projected budget for our upcoming production. After the Eternal Dawn disaster, now legendary in industry circles as the red carpet reckoning, she had approached me with a proposition, a new production company, with me as the creative head and her as the financial backbone. "These numbers look good," she said. Closing the folder, "When do you want to announce the project?" "After Lily's graduation next week," I replied. "She's excited about interning with us this summer before she starts at NYU Film School." Eliza nodded. "Like mother, like daughter. Speaking of which, have you seen this?" She slid a tablet across the desk, displaying an entertainment news site. The headline read, David Winters signs on to direct low-budget horror film after industry exile. I scanned the article without emotion. In the aftermath of the premiere, David had lost everything: the company, his reputation, his relationship with Mia, who had quickly moved on to a different producer once David's influence evaporated. The lawsuits from investors had stripped him of his remaining assets. Horror films, I mused. Well, it's a start. Everyone deserves a second act. Even him. Eliza raised an eyebrow. I considered this. I don't wish him ill, but I don't think about him much anymore either. My phone buzzed with a message from my daughter. Mom just got my graduation gown. Dad called. Said he can come if it's okay with you. I smiled at her message. Despite everything, Lily had maintained a relationship with her father, strained, cautious, but present. It was a testament to her emotional intelligence and capacity for forgiveness. Tell him yes, I typed back. This is your day. Everyone who loves you should be there. Setting my phone down, I turned back to Eliza. Life's too short to spend it looking backward. I've got films to make, a daughter to support, and a future that's finally mine to shape. Eliza raised her water glass in a toast. To second acts, and to the women who write them themselves. I clinked my glass against hers, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had felt like an ending had instead been a beginning. Painful, yes, but ultimately liberating. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly worth. And sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, but creation, building something new from the ashes of what was lost. As I looked out over Hollywood from my new vantage point, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: my story was just getting started. And this time, my name would be the one in lights. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Perhaps you've felt the sting of betrayal in your own life, or watched as someone tried to diminish your worth. Remember that your value isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Your story isn't over until you decide it is. This is Victoria Winters, sharing my journey with you. If my experience resonates with your own, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Subscribe for more stories of women reclaiming their power. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be written out of your own narrative. Until next time, this is Victoria Winters, signing off.